Well, good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's virtually speaking webinar, which is Updates to Tennessee Unemployment Insurance in 2024. You'll find today's webinar recording on our YouTube channel, linked on our website, tnworks.org, along with all past virtually speaking webinars in our online library. All who registered for today's webinar will receive an email with a link to the recording as well as our webinar materials. As questions arise during the webinar, please go ahead and enter them into the Q&A box, and we will cover them at the end of the presentation during the question and answer segment of the webinar. We encourage you to follow us on social media for future topics and events. Our Facebook is American Job Centers of Northwest Tennessee, American Job Centers of Southwest Tennessee, and American Job Centers of Greater Memphis. I'd like to introduce you today to today's panelist, Jeremy Colbert. He's an Assistant Administrator for the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Jeremy started with the department in 2008 as a part-time unemployment insurance claims agent after the staff at the Chattanooga American Job Center had helped him to obtain an interview for the open position. During his time with the department, Jeremy has served as a claims agent, an unemployment insurance manager, the unemployment insurance claims director, and most recently, an Assistant Administrator 1 for that division. He's currently an Assistant Administrator 2 with the Transformation Unit. We are so thankful to have his expertise to share with us today. And without further delay, Jeremy, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Good morning, everybody. All right. So my name is Jeremy Colbert, and I'm here to talk to you about some changes that have occurred over the last year in the Department of Labor, specifically the unemployment division. So one of the first things that we're going to talk about today is signing into our new website. So whenever you need to sign in, you're going to go to jobsfortn.gov, and you're going to come to this landing page, and you're going to focus on this right-hand side. There's two different things that you can log into. Logging in for unemployment purposes will be here, or signing up for your account. And job assistance, finding applicants, posting a job will be here. So there's two different areas. This find job applicants will help you search for employees, and you'll have to register here for that. For unemployment purposes, you're going to go to go to log into Unemployment Employer e-Services. This is our live website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click out of this, and we're going to go to our testing site, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to sign up. So we're going to click on sign up for an online account. You're an employer registered in Tennessee, and you're going to provide your FEIN. This is all fake information. And then your TIMPAWS code, which is, you should see that on your quarterly filing letter. If you do need assistance in finding these numbers, you can call 1-844-224-5818 and press 2. So once you type that information in, you're going to start creating your account. You'll need a valid email address. I'm just making this information up as I go. You'll have to verify that. And when you verify that email, it'll send a code to this email address. You'll put that verification code here for testing purposes. I'm just going to populate it because that is a fake email address. You'll have to put in a password here, a security question of your choosing, and your telephone number that you would like to use for your contact information. Then you'll have a certification page going over the information you just put in to make sure that it's valid. You'll certify that that information is correct. You're not a robot. And then you will be on our landing page. This employer you'll get the confirmation number just for your records that it was submitted and saved. So this is our landing page. There's nothing really happening with this employer because no claims have been filed. It's a brand new employer. There's no really information here for you to have to do anything. So we're going to go to one that actually has some information that I have built. Sorry, I got 3 screens. Sorry, I have 3 screens up. So if you see me looking side to side, I do know where the camera is. I'm just having to look at on other screens. Again, for security purposes, we're going to have this 2-factor verification. to make sure that it is you signing into your account. This is a fake employer just like the last. However, we have an action item here. So we have an employee that was separated and filed an unemployment claim. So whenever a claim is filed, we're going to send a separation request to an employer to provide us with the details regarding that separation. The claimant will file a claim. You have 8 days to respond, and then we have to make a decision. We're required to make decisions within 21 days, so it should occur within that 8 to 20 day range. So it's very important that you're actively on your e-services account and responding to these fact-finding questionnaires as they are sent, because that helps us make timely determinations and more accurate determinations because you are participating in the fact-finding questionnaire. So all you do is click on Respond to Fact-Finding. And then it's going to ask you about this particular employee. And then you're going to tell us the last day that they worked, whatever it may be, and why did the employee stop working or have a reduced schedule with you. So the claimant filed stating it was a lack of work. If it's a plain lack of work, which is the same as a furlough or reduction in force or temporary layoff, all those things are one and the same. So just use lack of work for that reason. But let's say that they actually were not laid off and they were discharged. You have the ability to make whatever the selection is. So at that time, you're telling us that they were discharged and not laid off. So we're going to have to go back to that claimant and gather more information from them. And then you're going to get into the intimate details of that separation. So let's say you chose that they were discharged for absenteeism. You're going to get a set of questions for that particular reason. And when you're filling out the separation information, it's very important to provide all the details, specifically the last thing that occurred that resulted in the separation. So if I have warned this claimant, they violated company policy, and they knew and they were aware that their job was in jeopardy. When you get through this fact-finding questionnaire, it's very important that you provide that documentation with your information that you provided on the fact-finding form. Because if you don't, we're going to have to send you an additional request requesting that information, such as written warnings, company policy, anything else that you may have that may prove that they were discharged for willful misconduct. So if you provide all that up front, we don't have to do the second request, and we don't have to bother you any further than we already have. So just make sure that when you're filling that out, you're providing as much information as you possibly can, because more information is better than not enough information. So you do that there, go through the whole process, and you'll be able to supply that fact-finding information to us, and we will be able to make a determination. It's also very important that you provide the claimant with a separation notice, specifically when it helps us when the sign on your building is different than your employer tax account. So if I go into Widget Incorporated, and that's who I think I work with, that is who I work with, but in my employer tax account is called something totally different than that. When claimants file their claims, they get a little confused and they'll put Widget Incorporated, and that's not really your tax account. So we need the actual tax account that you pay your unemployment taxes to. Put that account number here. That will assist the claimant when they file their claim into getting that information. And we have other stops. We have wages and all that kind of stuff, so that we kind of lead them into getting the correct employer when they file. However, if you're not in the base period, this does help out a good bit, and they provide this information to us sometimes so we can determine what the separation is. So if it's a lack of work, they received wages in lieu and severance, which can be disqualifying. So make sure that you're filling this out and giving that to your employees when they're separated. So let's go back to our account here. So anything that we need, it'll show up immediately when you sign in. And there is more information here on the Employer Services tab and additional services. So these are some of the things that have changed over the past year. One of the main things that we have is a new program called shared work. It's also called short-term compensation and a few other things, but we're going to call it the shared work plan. And what this plan is it's an alternative unemployment insurance program designed to help employers avoid traditional layoffs and retain skilled workers during a temporary decline in business. This program helps by allowing employers to reduce their employees' hours by supplementing reduced wages through partial unemployment benefits. And all that means is if you have a decline in business, say you know that in October that certain aspects of your business are going to decline. Instead of laying those employees off, you reduce the amount of hours that they're working. We now have a shared work plan that we can pay partial benefits to those employees based off the reduction of hours that they're going to receive. So, as an example, if the claimant's eligible for 325 and you reduce their hours by 40%, then we're going to pay them 40% of that 325, which will be a $130 weekly benefit amount. Now, there's several stipulations to this program, but all you have to do is click here and you'll be able to see the employer shared work program guide. So all that information is contained here. I'm not going to read all of that to you because that'll take some time, and it's all on the employer dashboard. So make sure that you're going to additional services here and reading that information if you are interested in that plan. And if you are interested in that plan, you can sign up for it here. And there's that guide again. You'll just click next. You'll fill out some information here regarding the plan that you're applying for. You'll basically be providing all the employees. You can do it by uploading this spreadsheet, which is supplied in the next screen, or you can fill it out on these screens as you go, and it creates that spreadsheet for you. So this is a brand new program, and if you're interested in it, please read those details and make sure that you apply for that. Give us 30 days to make a decision on that plan, and then we will be in contact with you on how to proceed with that this new program that we have. So we're going to go back. So that's here. We also have, so say you're laying off 50 people, 20 people, it doesn't really matter. What you can do is you can report that mass layoff to us in spreadsheet form by clicking here. Here, you can download that template, which looks exactly like the shared work template. Supply this information across those columns, and you'll be able to upload that document. And what that does is if the claimant comes in and files a claim, or your employee comes in and files a claim, we'll already have the verification, so you don't have to respond to those notices or anything like that. And we can approve those claims pretty quickly and get the payments out to the claimants that need it. The employer file claims, this is a partial type separation or temporary separation. So if I lay people off for 3 weeks out of the summer, up to 10, so it can be, you can lay them off for 1 week, up to 10 weeks, as long as they're returning back to work, you can file a partial claim for them. So what this does is you provide us with the sales spreadsheet, it files the claim for the claimant, and then they come in weekly and certify up until that return to work date, and then they come back to work, and you don't have to respond to those fact-finding requests. The claim goes in as approved, and the claimants get paid pretty quickly. So before we go into these next ones, I want to talk to y'all about some of the new laws that have been passed and a few other things. The first one we're going to talk about is the new weekly benefit amount that we have in Tennessee. So if you click here, you can actually go to the law and see what our weekly benefit amount has changed to. So the minimum is now $55 and the max is $325. So we're required now in Tennessee to read the unemployment rate biannually. That will be read on the first Sunday in April and the first Sunday in October. We look back at 6 months. So in April, we're going to look at July through December. Get that unemployment rate, which will determine the amount of time that the claimant can actually draw benefits. So you'll be able to see that information here. So if the unemployment rate is at 5.5 or less, they get 12 weeks. For each 0.5% that it increases above 5.5, additional weeks get added up to 20 weeks. So currently we're at 12 because our unemployment rate is around 3%. And I would expect October to be around the same as a preliminary reading, because we have to wait for the seasonally adjusted rate to come out before we can actually do the official reading of the unemployment rate. So that is a big change that has occurred. The max used to be 275 for 26 weeks. It is now 325 at 12 weeks, which can increase depending on the unemployment rate at the time of the reading. So if you go back here, we have our short-term compensation, which we went over. We have our employer reporting fraud and our 4 weekly work search activities. So prior to July, claimants had to do 3 work searches a week. Starting in July, they have to do 4, and they're listed here on things that are acceptable reasons or acceptable job search activities weekly. So they are all here, and we have to verify that information from the claimants and make sure that they're doing them. If they fail to do the work searches during a weekly certification, that results in a denial for that particular week. And also a new law came into effect here. So if a claimant fails to appear for a scheduled job interview, that means that they're non-compliant for that week. So if you have someone that has failed to show up to a job interview, you sign into your employer e-services, go to additional services, report a refusal of job interview. Now, you're probably not going to receive a response from us on these because they may not be filing unemployment. You wouldn't have any idea that they're filing. So you're just going to supply us the information. We're going to search our system to see if they actively certified for that week. And then we'll have to make a determination on that particular week if they were. So all you'll have to do is go to that, supply all the information that you possibly can. You'll be able to, like if you have a resume, you can attach that just to help us try to locate to see if that claimant was actually certifying during that week. So all of that is here, additional services, refusal of a job interview. To report a refusal of a recall, so if you, like we were talking about a little bit ago with a employer file claims, you temporarily laid them off, but they failed to return at the time that you advised them that they would be returning. That's what that's for. So you need to let us know that they failed to return, because that is a disqualifying event and would disqualify that claimant from receiving unemployment at that time. So I know that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. One other thing that I wanted to talk about is the benefit charges. If you're in the base period of a claimant, so currently what we're looking at when somebody files a claim is the first 4 of the last 5 completed calendar quarters. That determines the claimant's weekly benefit amount that they're going to receive on their claim. But you may not be considered the separating employer because they work for you in the first or second quarter of their claim and then went somewhere else and were separated. In those instances, what will happen is if the claim was approved and paid, you'll receive a benefit charge notice. So let's say they quit working with you to go to this new employer. At that time, you could request a non-charge for benefits, supply any information that you have, just like you would with the separation, but it's very important that you supply it all in the beginning. If you have the letter of resignation, things like that, make sure you're supplying that information. Because what can happen is, as a non-separating employer by law, you can file that protest up to 15 days after the first payment and be granted a non-charge. If the non-charge is granted, your employer account will not be charged and your employer reserve will not be affected. So it's very important, and all that information again will show up here. So it's very important to sign in. We have to be actively signing in and responding to those things so that we can make better determinations and grant the non-charges when necessary, all those types of things. Now, if you laid the person off, you're probably not going to be granted a non-charge. But if they quit on their own free will, then you would probably be granted a non-charge at that point. One thing that's going to occur in 2025, around the summer of 2025, all of our employer account tax, unemployment tax information is going to be here. So when you file your quarterly reports, you pay your bills, all of that's going to be located on this e-services account. So it would be good to go ahead get signed in, get used to using the new system, responding to things, because once we go live with the tax system, all of that information will also be here. So make sure that you're signing in and actively communicating with us. You can file wage protests or appeal a wage protest. You can appeal an agency decision. So if you disagree with the decision that was made, so everything is in one nice place: landing page, fact finding, employer services, additional services. You can find it all here, all the information that you need. So one thing we need to get out of this is please make sure you're signing in, actively participating in these unemployment claims to help us make better decisions on these separations and get ahead of the curve for the new unemployment tax system that will be coming the summer of 2025. And one thing we got going on is we have unemployment going back out into the comprehensive centers. We will have representatives starting here in the next few weeks that are fully dedicated to doing unemployment claims back out into the field to assist in claimants coming into the centers and needing help filing their unemployment claims and having questions and hopefully getting out. And when you need us there, we can help because we have them in those areas. So that is all I have today, and I will hand it back over.
Thank you for all that information, Jeremy. I want to clarify when he says back out into the centers, he's talking about the American Job Centers. So for the last several years, we have not had an unemployment insurance specialist in the American Job Centers. It's all been through online or phone calling in, with problems or troubleshooting. And so the department is going to place a person back into the comprehensive American Job Centers to help with those instances where the claim isn't as smooth as someone wants it to be. They're having a little bit of trouble or something like that. There will be a physical person in the center, in the American Job Center, that can assist them with their unemployment insurance claim. So we have several questions in the question and answer box. So we're going to go to those. You can continue to put questions in there that may arise as we are answering others, and we'll try to get to all of these before the conclusion of our webinar. So I'm just going to start at the very top. It says, and Jeremy, some of these questions may have you jumping again on your screen around to show some things they were regarding that. So must you sign up for the shared work plan ahead of time? You mentioned 30 days to make a decision if you are eligible for the shared work plan in the event you may need to use it in the future. So is this a ahead of time thing that has to be approved?
We will try to work with you the best that we possibly can. It would be more beneficial if it is ahead of the time, but we can see what we can do. I can't promise anything, but if you do have a situation where we need to go back and do those types of things, we're more than willing to talk to you about it.
The next one is, I believe he showed the additional services tab at the top, but I do not have that tab by the summary action center settings, etc.
More, yeah. Click here first and then there. So you're probably looking at the tabs across here. So it's going to be here and then additional services. I hope that helps.
The next question. Is this online platform the only option to respond to an unemployment claim, or is there a fax number or mailing address to send the information?
Yeah, whenever we send the separation notice, we mail it to you. It'll have different delivery mechanisms that you can send us the separation information. This is not the only way. This is the quickest and best way because we're asking you specific questions that we need regarding the separation, and that separation notice that we send does not have the ability to ask you every question that we need, but the conditional form online does. So it's more beneficial to go ahead and sign in and do it this way, but there are other methods to supplying that information.
Can more than one representative with a company have a login for the e-services, or is it limited to just one representative per company or employer?
I believe you can have multiple logins. The best thing to do would be call that number and press 2 so that they can walk you through that. I don't know myself how to actually do that, but I will try to get you the information and supply that to you so that you can send that out in the recording and documents.
Do you want to say, do you have that number handy again? Do you want to say it one
Yeah,
more time?
it's 1-844-224-5818, and then you press number 2. 1 is for claimants, 2 is for employers.
Okay. Is there someone on your team that can be contacted directly by phone or email for unemployment questions? Or will the staff you place in the American Job Center be able to help? Or will they only be there to assist claimant? So I guess the question is, for the employer perspective, is there a person and will the person in the center, or are they claimant only?
They're mostly claimant only, but I do have 3 representatives in the 3 regions that we have supervisors in that will be assisting employers in rapid response meetings and things like that. So if there's anything that we can do to help, we're more than willing. We're still go through that rapid response type protocol. If you can also send us a message in this additional service area right here. Whatever you have a question about, you can just send us a question and we'll respond to it that way.
So when they go to that to send you a message, does that go to your team?
Yes,
Okay.
it goes to the unemployment team.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Can you share some guidelines for what warrants the state approving or denying a claim? And this is from one of our local employers.
Yeah, so if you go to Tennessee Code Annotated 50-7-302 and 303, that is our guidelines. We do have federal guidelines as well, but most of our decision-making process comes from those those annotated codes.
Do you have those, Jeremy, available that you can just shoot over in that email for us to send out? Like, are those handy in a PDF, or they need to go online to find those?
I usually just go online, but I also have the green law book is what I use.
Okay.
I can see what I can find, but you
Okay.
can go online and type in 50-7-302 or 50-7-303, and you can see the guidelines that we have to follow.
It'll pop right up.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Another question. Why do we get requests for information on employees who are still employed?
The only reason that we're going to send you anything is if somebody filed unemployment using that social security number and using that name.
And
If they are employed, it is very, very important that you respond stating that they are employed.
so I want to mention this, Jeremy, because I know during COVID, when we had the large mass of claims, there was fraud. There were people using others' socials and names and things like that. So it is so critical that the employer responds so that y'all are able to determine, is this the actual individual filing? Is this a fraudulent claim?
And we have security measures,
Mhm.
but the claim is going to be filed, and we're going to require verification of ID and things such as that. But we're still going to send that notification because we don't know until we know. And it's very important to respond to those requests because we hear it every day in the news. Somebody had a breach. All our information is out on the dark web, all those types of things. And, it's unfortunately that's part of today's atmosphere. We have to combat those types of attempts. But that doesn't mean that the real person didn't file either.
Right. Oh, yes.
Yeah. That does happen. They get confused, and people can file unemployment if their hours are reduced or they're working part-time and not making over their weekly benefit amount. So just because they're employed and doesn't mean they're not actually eligible for unemployment.
What is the difference between the shared work and when in previous years the claimants would show if they worked a few hours during the week on their weekly certification?
So in shared work, you can make over your weekly benefit amount, and we're only paying you a percentage of your weekly benefit amount. And that's other scenarios, kind of what we were talking about just a second ago, is that the claimant is making under their weekly benefit amount. They would be eligible for that difference minus their earning allowance. So if their weekly benefit amount's 325 and they made 400, they're not getting anything for that week if they're reporting their earnings. But in shared work, if you reduced them and they're only getting paid $400 from the employer, I can pay them the percentage that they were reduced, even though it's over their unemployment weekly benefit amount.
And that's a newer program, so it's just going to take some time, people kind of digging through it and looking at it online, looking at the details, I think, to, really fully grasp what it's all about and the benefits of it. So, but it is new and it's something that y'all really want to get the word out on. And so I think it's good information.
Yeah, somebody could be the first one.
So this is another question. We still have several to get through. This person says they joined a little bit late, so you may have already addressed this, but looking forward to Christmas week. They will be closed, but will be paying 2 days of holiday pay, which is 50% of their weekly wage. Is that a situation we need to report for shared work?
So that really wouldn't be it depends on if you're on a shared work plan or if you're just temporarily laying them off for a week. Because if you're fully laying them off, that's not shared work. They have to be working a reduced percentage of their hours. If you're laying off because you lay off every Christmas or every July the 4th or during the holiday, whatever it may be, that's a temporary layoff. And if they have a return to work date, they have to report those holiday or vacation pay earnings. If they report and it's over their weekly benefit amount, they're not going to be eligible for benefits that week. If it's under, they would be eligible for the difference minus the earning allowance.
Where do they go online to complete the separation notice? She says, we were told to email it in.
You sign into your account right here. It's going to be there. We have a respond by date. So if that date's passed, then it's not going to be there anymore. But then you have to mail it in and all that kind of stuff. But right here, respond to fact find. That's why you got to just check it every day, because as soon as somebody files, that goes in there immediately. There's no delay. It shows up immediately. So then you just respond to fact finding. You got your claimants information or employees information. I'm sorry, I say claimant because that's how they are on my side. Employees information is here, and then you start filling out whatever separation reason it may be. Next, if you miss something, it'll pop up an error on you. So if they're laid off, when was their last day? Is it a permanent, temporary, other? So if it's a temporary reduction and they're coming back to work here, we don't require work searches because you don't want them looking for work. They're going to come back to you. So we give them a waiver on their work searches, and then they return back to work here. If they fail to return back, then you go back to where we talked about here. Employer services, additional services, refusal of recall. And you tell us that they didn't return after the expected return to work date.
A few more questions.
Yep.
We have another question about the shared work benefits.
Mm-hmm.
If our employees typically work 4 10-hour days and we have to slow down due to a slow period, would employees be eligible for the shared work benefits if they go down to only 2 or 3 days? And if so, how is the benefit amount calculated for that program? You spoke to the percentages.
Yeah. But... So the benefit amount is calculated using the indexing law here. So wherever their wages fall in these categories will be their weekly benefit amount. So you take their 2 highest quarters, divide it by 2, and then you find where they fall into this column here. So if you cut them, 40%, then we'd give them 40% of their weekly benefit amount. So if it's 325, it would be 130. So if they're not eligible for here, it's just 30%, 40% of 294 or 269, whatever it may be. But we wouldn't know that until the claim was filed and the monetary determination was made and all those kinds of things. But they can make over, because more than likely they're going to be making over if they're working 30 hours a week with anyone. And we would just pay them the percentage of their weekly benefit amount.
And there are times when the same documentation may be sent over and some are approved and some are declined for various reasons because it's case by case.
There has to be willful misconduct, but that's why it's so important to supply the information that led to the separation. What occurred, when it occurred, who was involved, were there any prior warnings, and if there are prior warnings, provide that documentation. And then the last reason, or the straw that broke the camel's back, what was that last final thing that occurred? Have all of that together and your company policy. Provide that when you supply the separation information, so it helps us determine if the claim's approvable or not. But like I said, it's case by case, and it all just depends on the situation at hand.
How early can you file a partial claim for a scheduled short-term layoff?
I would say a few weeks. You can go ahead and get us the information, and we can get it set up and ready, and then that allows us plenty of time to put it in the day that it occurs. We wouldn't file the claim for them at the time like if you provided it early, because they're not eligible at that time, and you want to set the benefit amount at the time the separation occurs. But you can go ahead and supply it, tell us we're good to go, and then we'll put it in on the date that the temporary layoff occurs.
We've received letters in the past saying to look for fact-finding requests regarding a separation or wage information, but then there was not a request in the system. What do we do in that instance?
So I would reply another way, because that's what I was saying. It's important that when you supply, sorry, I lost my mouse here. Make sure you're supplying this so that the claimant knows who to send it to, because if you're not in their base period and you're a franchisee, you're paying from a different account than what's on the sign of your building. That's what we have as the employer account, and that's the record that we have to use. So if they use, I don't want to say names because I don't know the rules of YouTube, but they have golden arches. If they say that place and they give that address, but that corporation is not paying their unemployment taxes, the franchisee is, that's the name they need in the employer account here. But they may not have a clue that is who is paying them. They know they're going into that golden arches.
And anytime that there's a question here from an employer, they can go into that messaging system and message you guys and say, this is occurring, what do we do now, correct?
Yes, if everything works how it should, and just make sure you're responding in any way necessary, but it'll show up here if everything is how it should be. They had the employer account, you're in their base period, we made it, all those types of things. We try not to make decisions without employer account numbers. Now, if you're an out-of-state employer, you're not going to have a Tennessee employer account number because you're not a Tennessee employer. But they can still file claims in Tennessee, even though they worked in Alabama or Georgia or anything like that, if they have wages here. So there's a lot of varying things that can occur in unemployment.
Since we have a new system, can we file for partial unemployment for employees for past date?
No, ma'am.
Done retroactively to allow them to receive a waiting week.
No, we're willing to work with anybody, but we can't go back months or weeks or anything like that. If you're actively working with us, we will do our best to get everything situated and your people paid, but we can't go back months or years or days or weeks or anything like that.
Right. It's from the day they actually sit down and file, that day forward. There's no retroactive at all, correct?
Because the partial system is basically the same as what we previously had. It's a list that you supply us, and then we upload it and get everybody's claim in, and they certify.
Okay. How many weeks of UI benefits can an employee draw on the shared plan?
That's a good question. It's not going to be exactly 12. So if I do 325 times 12, I have a max benefit amount of $3,900. So if I'm reporting earnings or not getting my full 325 a week, and I'm only reducing it by 130, so they can get 30 weeks at that point. So the max weeks just sets your maximum benefit amount that you can receive, but it can be reduced, which would increase the amount of time that you can draw for unemployment.
That was all 20 questions that were in the Q&A box for right now, unless it pops in before we hop off. We're really thankful for all the information that you shared today. I know there's a new UI system, and everybody's going to have a lot of questions. The shared plan is new, and so we really appreciate you coming and sharing with us today. He shared a lot of great information, and we hope it was very beneficial for you today. If there are other, generic type questions, not specific to a claim or something like that, that pop up in the next day or two as you kind of revisit what we talked about today, feel free to send those to us and we'll try to get you an answer for those, because I know it was a lot of information and it came fast and a lot of Q&A afterwards. So we just really appreciate your attendance, and Jeremy, we appreciate your expertise that you shared with us today. Thank you all.